Hello and welcome to Heart with Abagaba, the podcast where we celebrate the love, laughter, and little moments that make families shine. Whether you're a parent, grandparent, educator, or simply someone who believes in the magic of childhood, this is your place. Every week, we share real stories, inspiring voices, and joyful conversations that warm the heart and lift the spirit. So grab a cozy seat. It's time to go to Heart to Heart. Stop Smart sponsors Heart to Heart with Abagaba, your one stop destination for stuffing and not medical concierge services for adults, teens, and children. For more information, visit www.staff-smart.org or call 480-875-6871. Hello, beautiful people. You are listening to Heart with Abagaba. I'm your host, Abby Dominguez. And this space is where stories bloom, truth flows, and family is always at the center. Today, we are joined by a guest whose voice carries wisdom, healing, and a lot of heart. In this episode of Heart to Heart, we are shining light on the incredible strength of the human spirit and the healing power of storytelling. My guest is a woman who has not only written compelling novels like Daughters of Green Mountain Gap, An Enemy Like Me, and Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, but has also lived a story of deep transformation and resilience. In the summer of 2020, she biked 3,102 miles across the United States on a tandem, an adventure that became a path to healing after a 14-year emotionally abusive marriage. That journey inspired her influential book, 10 Little Rules for a Double-Butted Adventure, released this February. And just this past April, she stepped into children's literature with Little Lola and Her Big Dream, a sweet and inspiring story for dreamers of all ages. She's also the voice behind the Online for Authors podcast, where she encourages and amplifies writers across the globe. Please welcome a storyteller of courage, resilience, and hope, Teri Brown.
Thank you so much, Abigail. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Oh, I'm so excited. And Teri, I'm conversing with you from Mesa, Arizona. Please tell our listeners where we are connecting from and add a short bio.
Yeah, so I'm living in the North Carolina along the coast in a little town called Calabash. And I guess short bio, I've kind of lived in a lot of places. I was born in Athens, Greece. My dad was in the Air Force. I did a lot of my growing up years in Canton, Ohio. Uh, in high school, we moved to North Carolina. I've lived around many different places in North Carolina. And although I had always thought that I wanted to write, I don't think I really knew what that entailed.
Mhm,
And then I got married and I had children. I ended up divorced. I got remarried, and that was an abusive relationship that I stuck with for 14 years. I guess I didn't want to be divorced twice, and I was just trying to figure out
mhm.
a way to make things work.
Yeah.
But when I got out of that relationship, that's when I really began writing, and that's when the words started flowing out of me.
Mhm,
But it wasn't until I met Bruce, my third husband, and we went on this trip across the United States that I was able to heal a lot of wounds.
I love
And
it.
that's when I finally said, "Hey, I can do anything I put my mind to." I just rode 3,000 miles across the United States. And so 14 months after we completed that trip in 2020, my first book, Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, came out.
Oh, I just love it. Oh my goodness. So, what kind of research do you do, and how long do you spend researching before beginning a book?
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on like the kind of book. So my first three novels are historical fiction in nature, and I don't necessarily stick to the idea that you have to know all about it before you can write about it. And so my first book was about Ukraine, and I knew very little about that. So I do quite a bit of research in the beginning, but I remind myself that research will only go so far, and then I'm writing a fiction novel. And so once I have enough research that I feel like I have the setting,
Mhm,
then I can go about and I start writing. I often do a little bit of research while I'm writing.
mhm.
Like maybe I'll be in a specific scene and I'll think, gee, could this have really happened? Or did they have this product then, or whatever? And I'll do that research. And then once again, when I'm doing my editing, I might do more research to add more to the scene of the place to make sure that it really feels like where I want it to feel like. So can't really tell you in terms of time, but
Right.
I do know that you can get stuck in these rabbit holes and you can go down, down, down and research and research. But if you do that, you'll never write. And so
Right.
I give myself just this, like now's my research time. Okay, now we're done.
Mhm.
Because you can research something forever and you'll keep finding new information.
Right, right. So, how long on average does it take you to write a book?
So if I have an opportunity to go away to like a writer's residency where I don't have any obligations and I can just write, I
Mhm.
can usually get a first draft out in 2 weeks. So that's usually in the neighborhood of 60 to 70,000 words. And it's not pretty and it's not ready for readers, but that first draft is out. And then over the next 2 to 4 months, I do quite a bit of editing where I've gone through and I've read it and I've added notes and I've made changes and etc. At that point, I'm ready to give it to a human editor. And then it'll take me another month or two after I have an editor go over it for me to make those adjustments. And
Mhm.
then the book is ready or at that point for me where I go into like the pre-sale mode where I start
Uh-huh.
marketing the fact that the book is going to become available. And I
Right.
give myself another 3 months or so. So from the point that I actually start the book until I'm ready to have it go on sale is somewhere between 9 months to a year.
I love it. I know that so much hard work and heart goes into it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, tell us about the genre you write.
So I don't like to be put into a box.
Hmm.
So my first three novels are historical fiction, but when you look at them, you'll see they're vastly different. One is in the 1970s in Ukraine. One is World War II genre that goes between um, North Carolina, Ohio, and then Germany. And then one is set in the 1890s in the North Carolina mountains. But I tell people I'm not really a historical fiction author. I'm a character-driven fiction author. So if you love a good character, you love to see how they grow, what they become,
Hmm.
then you'll like my books because I try to take you on a ride with this character and wherever that ride happens to be. So if it's historical, then that's fantastic. But like I have one I'm working on right now that's a contemporary novel.
Hmm.
So I think that it's more about I love characters and I love to see where they belong best to tell their story.
I love that. So, how did you get started writing?
I don't know. As a kid, I said I wanted to be an author. But I think what I really loved was books. I was an avid reader. I read all the time. I was the kid that had the flashlight under the covers and the whole 9 yards. I just loved to read.
Mhm.
Um, Then in 2000, I had 4 children. I wanted to be able to be home with them,
Yeah.
but I desperately needed some extra income, and I started writing for small businesses. So they would have websites and the information on them was accurate, but the writing wasn't very good. And so I approached these small businesses and helped them kind of clean up their websites and make them more approachable.
Hmm.
I did that for, I don't know, 20 years, about 20 years. But in 2017, when I left my abusive marriage, words just started coming out of me. Like
I
I
love it.
couldn't help myself. And I started writing manuscript after manuscript, but I didn't show it to anyone.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until we finished up that ride. And I really did. I had kind of an epiphany. We were finishing up the ride in Washington, D.C. at the Marine Corps Memorial. My husband was a 25-year veteran and a Marine, and we were raising money for Toys for Tots. So it felt like a fantastic place to stop. But as we were approaching that monument, I realized that I had done something pretty incredible, that
Yes.
I had pedaled across the United States, and I'm not an athletic woman, and this was well beyond my normal, thing that I would do on any given day. And that if I could do that, I could do anything I put my mind to.
Amen.
It wasn't a matter of can I do it? It was a matter of what do I want to do?
Yes.
And that's when I decided I want to be an author. It's what I really want. And so
Oh,
14 months later, my first book came out.
oh, I just love it. So, what advice can you give to writers and aspiring writers?
Yeah, so the first thing I tell people is just write.
Just
Like
write.
don't wait. Don't wait for the right time.
Mhm,
Don't wait for the right class or a degree
mhm.
or someone to tell you it's okay. Go ahead and start writing. You're never going to become better at it by thinking about it.
Right.
I tell people all the time, I said it'd be like assuming you can get good at tennis because you thought about it. You're never going to get good at tennis that way, and you won't ever get good at writing. Once you've written enough that you're starting to feel comfortable with what you've written, I highly recommend finding a good critique partner,
Mhm.
someone who can be honest and
Yes.
also kind.
Yes.
You don't want someone who's just mean and says everything you've written is terrible. You
Oh,
want
no.
someone who can say, here are some good things I see, and
Yes.
here are some things that I could see that you could work on.
Mhm.
Because the truth is it's very hard to critique our own work.
Right.
You know what you meant, you know what you were thinking, you know
Mhm.
what you feel the person should be getting when they read it, but you
Mhm.
don't really know until you show it.
Until you show it. Yeah.
Um, yeah. And then I think my third piece of advice is remember that the work is yours.
Yeah.
So it's good to listen to critique partners. And
Uh-huh.
actually, it's wonderful to have several different people letting you know their feelings.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's
Yes.
your work.
Exactly.
And so it's good to listen. And it's also good to remember that you don't have to take every single person's advice, that
Right.
sometimes what you want to do is the right thing to do.
Yeah. Yes. Because I can see if you take every person's advice, it'll become a really big hot mess.
Oh yeah, well, so I had a group of like they call them beta readers, which are, your early readers.
Mhm.
And I had a group of I think seven, and they each sent me, what they thought. And there were times where they were all very different, and I could not follow all of them because if I
Oh,
did what one suggested, it would be against what someone else suggested.
right. Right. Right.
And so you can't make yourself crazy. You're never going to please everyone.
You're
But I
not.
think, yeah, I think the value of a beta reader like that though is you have the ability for someone to point out something you may have missed.
Right. Right. Right.
But you don't have to take every single person's advice because once again, not everyone is going to like what you write, and
Right.
that's okay.
Right. And that's okay. That's okay. I really love that. So now tell us about your five nonfiction books.
So those were written early. Those were written well before I went on this ride, and it happened kind of accidentally, um, where I realized that I was really good at taking facts and distilling them down into ways that people could understand them. And so all of those books that I wrote were written basically under a contract of, hey, I need to explain to people how to, be a landlord.
Right.
And so I would gather the information, create an outline, get that outline approved, and then find a way to put all of that material out in a way that was easy to read and digest. Although that was a really cool thing to do, and I'm glad that I had that experience, it doesn't feel in any way like the writing I'm doing now, because the writing I'm doing now is creative and it comes from like deep inside of me, and I'm creating characters and scenarios, and it's me, and I don't have to create an outline that gets approved, and I don't have to make sure that I have a certain number of steps in each chapter or anything like that. And so um it's just a very different experience. It was far more like the work that I was doing for small businesses when I was
Uh-huh.
creating website content and articles.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So it's so amazing that you knew you always wanted to write as a child. If there
Yeah.
are parents, educators, or somebody listening who also has a child, or who, okay, who wanted to be an author as a child themselves, or who has children who would like to be authors when they grow up? Do you have any insight to share with them?
Um, I'm not real sure. They have those wonderful, creative writing programs and things in college, but I'm not positive that that's the way to start.
Hmm.
I think it might not be bad to have something like that under your belt, but
Yeah,
to me, the more important thing is to read, to
to
read
read,
widely.
to read widely.
And
Yeah,
yeah, so not just one genre, like a lot of kids right now are into fantasy and that's all
right,
they will read.
right,
Or
right,
I have several adult friends who are into historical fiction and that's all they will read.
right.
You don't you don't really learn about the writing process and how it feels and how it
Mm.
flows if you continue to stick with only one genre. So
Right.
I'd say read widely
Read
from
widely. Yeah.
from old classics up
Mhm.
to brand new thrillers and fantasies and historical fiction. Readers who are, I mean, authors who are super well known to
Yes.
authors no one has ever heard of.
Right.
Um, and the more you read, the more you will understand a good story feels like in your
Feels
soul.
like, right.
And then I
Ooh,
think the other thing is, you have to have experiences. So I
experience.
can imagine coming out of college with a 4-year degree in creative writing. What do I write about?
Right.
Unless I had a really traumatic childhood or something that gave me a lot of experiences that most people don't have. When I got out of college at 22, I was very typical and average. I
Hmm.
don't think I would have had a whole lot to say.
Hmm.
So I think that sometimes it's not that I think that you shouldn't be a writer young. So if you want to write, definitely like get started and start doing it. But I
Yeah.
think that as you get older and have more experiences, you start to develop maybe a different style and a different sense
Right.
of what
Right.
what you're trying to get across to the world.
Oh, that resonates with me so much. I'm gonna take this advice under my belt as well. So tell us about mentoring others.
Yeah, I love sharing things that I've learned in hopes that maybe I can save someone else a little bit of time. I spent 14 years in that emotionally abusive relationship. I look back now and realize there were ways I could have gotten out of that I didn't need to be as stuck as I was.
Mhm.
And so my hope is to mainly help other people. I like working with women and I like working with young adults, helping them see the value that they have,
The value they
that
have. Yes.
everything that they need to succeed is inside of them.
Oh.
They've already got it. It's a
Mhm.
matter of uncovering it, learning how to use it,
Yes.
maybe enhancing it with a little more education or a little more whatever. But you have that.
You have
The
that.
grit, the determination, the resilience, all those things that you need,
Mhm.
those are all there within you. And sometimes the world buries them and you have trouble knowing how to find them again, but
Right.
you've got that. And so for me, I like to do mentoring where I kind of help people see that they have it, they have that value, that they have the worth, and that they're worthwhile and worth the effort it's going to take to move forward in whatever direction they would like to go in.
Yes. Oh, that is just deeply beautiful. I'd
Thank you.
like to, I'd like for you to tell us about the tandem biking across
Yeah.
to raise money. I think that's one of my favorite questions. I mean, I don't have any favorite questions, but I think that's just so amazing. Like, that is so awesome. So,
So, yeah, when my husband and I were dating, I had been thinking that I wanted to do something big and bold.
yeah.
I had gotten out of this bad relationship. I've kind of felt like my life was over in a lot of ways. I couldn't imagine that I had anything left to give. That,
Mhm.
of course, was due to having been, in this abusive relationship. But I thought that people were seeing me as someone who was kind of done. And I thought, I want to do something big.
I love
Well,
it.
during that time, Bruce says to me, Hey, I've always wanted to ride across the United States on a bicycle.
That's awesome. I just
And
can't stop saying
you
that.
know,
Sorry.
No, and my thought was, well, that would be an adventure. And so I just said to him, is this something you're going to talk about until the day you die, or are you going to do it? And he said, no, I really want to do it. I said, count me in.
Count me
So
in.
we ended up going on a tandem bicycle. So that's a two-seater bicycle for those of you who don't know what that is.
Uh-huh.
Um, and we started on the coast of Oregon in Astoria, actually
Mhm.
dipped our wheel in the Pacific Ocean,
Oh,
and we rode all the way across the United States until we got to Washington, D.C.,
oh,
3,102 miles. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And
oh,
it was
that,
the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life.
oh. I have this visual image in my mind, and I'm just stuck there, and I love it. I don't want this to go
I
away.
just, I hope that the visual image includes sweat because there was a lot of sweat.
Well, that makes it a more worthwhile. That makes it a more
Yeah.
fun, good fun. Yeah, yeah.
Right, right. While going across the United States, I did a lot of healing. I learned a lot about myself. And that's what my book, 10 Little Rules for a Double-Butted Adventure, is about.
Yeah.
Is those are the things that I learned while riding across the United States. I learned them about me, I learned them about life, I learned them about
Oh,
other people. And for me, they're kind of things that I think I knew already deep down, but I hadn't ever like listed them, like said, wow, these are things that I can live by. So for instance, one of my rules is never quit on a bad day.
oh yeah.
And I don't say never quit. Sometimes quitting is the exact thing you should do.
Right.
Like I was in an abusive relationship and quitting was exactly the right thing to do.
The right thing
But
to do. Yeah.
why don't quit on a bad day? Well, we all have bad days and you know how those feel. We get very emotional.
Yes.
Everything on a bad day is a reason to quit. My
Yeah.
shoes are too tight. The sun came up in the east again this morning. Anything can make you stop, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just tired.
Hmm.
But if you quit on a day like that, you'll always wonder, could I have gone on? Could
Right.
I have made it? Could I have been successful in this? So instead, maybe take a step back, give yourself a little break,
Hmm.
have a few successes, and then say, is this still serving me? Do I
Oh,
still want to do this? And if the answer is still no, then stopping is by far the best choice. But for me on this particular ride, we ended up on it was a horrible day. It was 70 miles. We had no choice but to go that far because there was
mhm.
nothing in between.
Right.
It was hot. It was hilly. The wind was blowing the wrong way.
Oh
There
no.
were mosquitoes.
Oh
They were
no.
huge. They were huge,
Wait, those,
enormous.
oh,
And I feel like they drank bug spray for breakfast. I mean,
oh my
they
gosh.
were just horrible. And then we had not one, not two, but three flat tires across the
Oh
day.
no.
And and by the time we made it to where we were going, I was done. And I
Done,
wasn't
done,
just done
done,
for the
done,
day. I was done. I wasn't
done,
ever getting back on the bike again.
done. That's
And I
something I
was
would
keeping,
say.
yeah, done. D-U-N, done, right? Like I'm not doing this anymore. And I kept a blog the whole way across the United States, and people were reading it. I think they were
Oh,
mostly reading it because it was the summer of 2020 and everyone's trapped at home during
right.
COVID. And my
With
husband and I
COVID.
are out riding a bicycle. And I wrote in the blog, I'm done.
I'm
I
done.
can't do this
Okay.
anymore.
Yeah.
I think we're calling it. I had a friend say to me, Teri, what you've done is amazing. You've
Oh,
made it over the Rocky Mountains on a tandem bicycle. Most people cannot say that.
right.
You've ridden over 1,000 miles. Everything you've done is amazing. And if you quit today, you have nothing to hang your head over. However,
Oh,
I recommend that you don't quit on a bad day.
oh,
You'll
a good
always
friend.
wonder. You'll always wonder. Whatever you decide, I stand with you. And that was kind of the end of her message. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, oh my goodness,
Oh,
those are words to live by.
yes.
And so my rules for a double-butted adventure, I think a lot of people are under the assumption that it's for something big like riding across the United States. And although that's where I learned them, these are rules for any time you're stepping outside of your comfort zone.
Yes.
So whatever your adventure is, your adventure could be something like moving to a new city, or deciding, to get into or out of a relationship, or what are you going to do when the kids, move out, or, I'd like to learn to watercolor. It can be anything that is a little beyond your norm. And
Right.
that's what these rules are supposed to help you do, is to find those things you can hang on to that allow you to kind of expand beyond the box that we tend to put ourselves in.
Mm. What a good friend.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I just love how not only did you bike across the country, but you also to raise money. That's just
Right.
that.
I think,
Wow.
when we first were thinking about it, it was a very selfish endeavor. My husband wanted to do it because he'd always wanted to do it. I wanted to prove, that I still had value. But
Mhm.
as we thought about it, it was like, we're going to be doing something really huge. And when you do things that are really big like that,
Yeah.
there's ways to help others too.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so instead of
Yes.
being selfish, what can we do? And Toys for Tots is something that was very near and dear to my husband's heart.
Oh.
And in our community, we have two counties that are together during Toys for Tots collections, and the kids want bicycles and often don't get them. And there are often children who aren't served by Toys for Tots because there weren't enough donations. And so we decided that we were going to try to raise enough funds to give every child who asked for a bicycle in our two
Oh.
counties who wanted a bicycle would get one. And not only did we do that, every child who wanted a bicycle got one, but also every organization that asked for help for children got the help that year. And
Oh.
so it was really very beautiful, and completely made our Christmas.
That's just beautiful. Terry, do you want to share your social media handles with us, your website, or
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah?
So the best place to find me is on my website, which is my name, www.terrymmbrown.com. And that's Terry with one R. So Teri. If you go there, you'll find all my social media handles. Normally it's Teri M Brown author, but there are some differences. So definitely you can find all the links there. You can find my newsletter there. You can find my podcast there, which is online for authors, where I talk to other authors like myself. I read their books and we have quick little discussions. It's a great way to figure out what you might want to read next. And you can also just reach out to me on my contact page.
Wonderful. Wow, what a powerful conversation. I want to thank Terry for sharing not only her creative journey, but also the deeply personal path that led her here. Her story reminds us that healing isn't always a straight line. It can look like 3,102 miles on a tandem bike, or the quiet courage it takes to write that first page, whether it's her novels, memoir, a brand new children's book, Little Lola and Her Big Dreams. Her work inspires hope, strength, and the belief that it's never too late to begin again. If today's episode touched your heart, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need this reminder. Healing is possible, and your story matters. Terry, do you have any final words to share with us?
I think, I pretty much shared them. My big thing would be, don't have a bucket list.
Don't have
Get
a bucket
started
list
today.
today.
Find, right. If there's something on your bucket list that you want to do it now. Start now, whatever that is, even if it's small. Make one step today toward getting that thing accomplished.
I love it. Until next time, I'm Abby Dominguez, and this is Heart to Heart with Abagaba, where we celebrate families, children, and the courage it takes to live with love and purpose. Terry, have a wonderful day, and
Thank you so much.
you're very welcome. Aspire Behavior Health also sponsors Heart to Heart with Abagaba. They offer monitoring, counseling, medication, and personal care services in a beautiful residential setting. Contact AspireCBH at outlook.com or call 480-875-6871. Thank you for joining us for another heart to heart moment. I hope today's story touched your heart the way it touched mine. If this episode spoke to you, share it with someone you love And don't forget to subscribe to this and our YouTube channel so you never miss the moment of connection, inspiration, and joy. The stories and insights shared on Heart to Heart with Abagaba are personal and based on lived experiences. While some of our guests may be licensed professionals in their fields, the content of this podcast should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. For expert guidance, please consult a qualified professional directly. Until next time, take care of your heart, take care of each other, and keep celebrating the love that makes us family. Celebrate!